Only on Dov?
Yeah, so
Great.
don't go to this area.
Okay, thank you, Dov, for setting that up. And welcome, everybody. And this week's Parsha is Parshas Mishpatim. Mishpatim comes from Mishpat, from judgments and rules. And one of the most famous and most misinterpreted lines of the Torah is an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand. And there are many societies where it's taken literally. Right? In a good part of the Middle East, you have people walking around without hands, right? If they've been caught doing different things. Now, we of course know that when the Torah says ayin tachas ayin, as the Gemara, it's interesting, the Gemara is on Daf Pei Dalet in Bava Kama, and that's Pei Dalet, right? So instead of, right, the paying is done with money. It means a monetary allocation. And we will assess the value of the eye. And exactly when we say the eye, that will soon see also there are different ways of understanding that. Okay? But everyone agrees that we're talking about monetary. However, the problem is that the Torah says what? An eye for an eye. So who gives an eye tachat eye? An eye beneath, or in the place of an eye. In the stead of, in the place of an eye. Okay? So how do we understand the Torah? Well, the rabbi. Well, let me first present it in that manner. How do the rabbis come along and say that it means differently? Now, of course, that is a misrepresentation, because it's not the rabbis who come along. The rabbis are transmitting to us the Torah Shebaal Peh, and we'll learn through a bit of an Even Ezra, right? And the Torah Shebaal Peh is an intrinsic part of the Torah that was given along with the Torah. So the explanation was given on Sinai to Moshe that an ayin tachas ayin means a monetary payment. But why was it presented in the way that it was presented? And how, from the context of the psukim, can we see that it can only mean a monetary context? It cannot mean, it makes no sense to learn that it means literally an eye for an eye. If you poke out someone else's eye, then your eye is going to be disabled, poked out, whatever it is. Yes, Steve?
No, I was wondering whether the word tachas.
So we'll come to, that's a good point. We're going to come to all of that. So what I'm presenting today is from a Rabbi Giel student, who is a well-known Rav and writer, and it was on a website, I think, called Torat Emet, where it was, or Eishta, I'm not sure, right? And where it was presented very beautifully. So let me say it b'shem Omro. I'm sorry?
When you stop being a student to become a professional?
Yep. When the doctors will stop practicing. That's right. Okay, so let's open up to page 420. And let's see the psukim. And as always, we want to understand and analyze a verse. We can't look just at that pasuk. You need to see the context in which it is presented. I remember when I was in Israel as a teenager, so there were a lot of missionaries. It's the very late 70s, or late 70s, early 80s. A lot of missionaries around then. And Eish HaTorah gave out this little laminated card, how to refute a missionary. And it was very funny, because the missionary comes over to me. I say, just wait a second, take out my card. He says his first thing, which is number 1 on the list. And I say, it's ridiculous because of this and this. He goes to number 2. Right? He had the same script as I, but I had the answers. And we went through all 10. What was uncanny was, then he went back to number 1. And I realized I was talking to a tape recorder. I was not engaging a person who was engaging his mental faculties. But invariably, what they do is they're taking a pasuk completely out of context. Either Well, either usually or a combination of misinterpretation, turning something into messianic or is not messianic, and taking completely out of context. So whenever you want to understand something, we must view it in the context. So let's go, first turn to page 422. Okay? And there we see it, verse 24. Unbelievable. Ayin tachat ayin, an eye for an eye. Shein tachat shein, a tooth for a tooth. Yad tachat yad, a hand for a hand. Regel tachat regel, a foot for a foot. Kavia tachat kavia, a burn for a burn. Petza tachat petza, a wound for a wound. Chabura tachat chabura, a bruise for a bruise. Can't be clearer than that, right? Well, let's double back a little bit. And once again, let's see the context. Let's go back to Pasuk Yudchet. That's where it actually begins. V'chi yirivun anashim, page 420. When two men are having a quarrel. V'hi ka'ish et re'ehu be'even o be'egrov. And one of them hits the other one with either a fist, a growth, or with a stone. Are we talking intentional or accidental here? Intentional. They're arguing, and he hits him with a stone or with his fist. Right? So a fist normally is not accidental. It's not that your nose hit my fist. Right? You can't blame the person for his nose hitting your fist. Okay? V'lo yamut. So he intentionally beat this guy. He didn't die. V'nafal l'mishkav. But he did fallen to bed. Meaning he was bedridden. He was off his feet. Im yakum talech b'chutz al mishanto. If he will get up and walk outside, right? Then, on his own power, v'nikah hamaken. The one who struck him is absolved. Rak, however, shifto yitain v'rapo yirapeh. He's got to pay monetary payments. Actually, there are 5 monetary payments. Here the Torah lists 2 of them. Shifto yitain, that's the workman's comp. Right? The time that he missed, he'll have to reimburse him. V'rapo yirapeh. And he must heal him. Okay, verse 20 and 21 is talking about when a person intentionally hits a slave or a maidservant. And we go through the din over there, the law over there. Let's go to 22 now. So the first 2 were intentionally hitting another free person versus 20, that was 1819, 2021 was intentionally hitting a slave. Verse 22, V'chiyinatsu anashim, if 2 men are fighting, V'nakfu isha hara, and they collided with a pregnant woman. Is this intentional or unintentional? We're talking about the damage done to the pregnant woman. Unintentional. V'yatsu yiladeha, and she miscarries.
What? Oh, sorry.
And she miscarries. V'lo yi'ason, but there was no fatality to her. Anosh ye'anesh. What will happen? Person will be punished. Kasher yashit alav bal ha'isha v'natan b'flilin. As it will be assessed against him, that's what he will need to pay according to the judges. V'im ason yiyeh, but if there will be a fatality, v'natata nefesh tachat nefesh, then there's a life for a life. Ayin tachat ayin, an eye for an eye, etc., as we did before. Shein tachat shein. So this is talking about when it was accidental. Is that clear? This is talking about when it was accidental. Now, what difficulty do we have in logically understanding that this means literally an eye for an eye or a foot for a foot? Why does that make no sense to say that? Why does it make no sense?
Because then you'd have to punish the person who did the cutting off.
No. I'm not talking about an outside point. I'm talking within the context of these 4 psukim. Let's go again. The first 2 dealt with someone who accosted someone else intentionally or accidentally. Intentionally. And what was the repercussion for that? Monetary payment. Right? The guy, right? Monetary payment. The guy was bedridden. Right? Do we say a wound for a wound over there?
No.
Do we say bruise for a bruise? No. What does it say over there? Monetary payment. What are these psukim discussing over here? Intentional or accidental? This is now accidental. They hit the pregnant lady, right? That's what happened over here. Here it's accidental. Does it make any logical sense to say that the Torah is telling us that when a person intentionally beats someone else, there's a monetary payment? No physical harm done to him. If a person accidentally causes harm to someone else, then the person is going to be physically harmed. Does that make any sense whatsoever in the context of these psukim? No. Is that perfectly clear? So if I intentionally beat someone, we just learned in verse 19, what do? You have to pay. It makes no sense to learn that when I accidentally mention 5, collide with a pregnant woman, she miscarries, no fatality, but there was damage, he should be punished, right? As assessed against him. There's a fatality, life for a life. But if there's no fatality, what is it? An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. In an accidental, we're now going to hit them up. We're now going to physically accost them. It makes no sense whatsoever. Therefore, from the context of the psukim, it is very clear that the Torah is not obligating, if in the case of an intentional beating, the punishment is a monetary payment for the damage caused, then certainly over here in the case of an accident, it's got to be a payment of the damage caused.
I'm not clear on example 4. She gets hit while they're fighting, and there's no death, there's no what? The fetus doesn't?
Not the fetus. She lost the fetus. That's not considered murder. That's not considered murder. That's not considered murder. The Torah does not consider an unborn child a fully living being that taking that life is murder. We deal with it we approach it in a very serious manner. It is the snuffing out of a potential life, but it's not murder. Okay? Okay. So we hear from that context. Is that clear? That from the context, it makes no sense to say that it means that there's going to be a physical removal of an eye when the damage is done intentionally and it's only a monetary payment. Over here, when it's accidental, then of course it must be a monetary payment. So let's look at the words, though. Let's understand the wording. So, Mefarshim come around to saying, let me tell you the conclusion of the Eben Ezra. What he says is, what the person should have happened to him. Meaning the severity of what was done warrants Yeperish ayin tachat ayin ra'ui liyoto. Right? He should realize that he really should be forfeiting his own eye for the other's eye. But that's not what the Torah is telling us to do. But let's look at the wording. And it's very interesting. Tachat, the word tachat, that's what it here. Tachat, beneath, in place of. He brings from Nechama Leibniz, who brings from Dr. Benno Jacob, who was a non, as far as I know, non-orthodox, but an amazing understander of text. He says the word tachat never means that I've got to suffer something because you have. That's how the misinterpretation goes. Ayin tachan ayin. An eye for an eye. You lost your eye. You suffered the loss of an eye. Now I've got to suffer also the loss of an eye. Rather, he says, tachat is always means one party giving or suffering something that the other party cannot do. For example, the classic usage of tachat is when a king dies, then what happens? His son goes tachat in the place of the father. The father, the previous king, can no longer rule, so now he goes in place to do something that the other one can't do. Classically, remember when Yosef had the goblet planted in the bag of Binyamin, and he wanted to take Binyamin as a slave, and he was doing this in order to replay for the brothers one of Rachel's sons being taken as a slave to see their reaction. Well, Yehuda comes forward and says, Vayigash love Yehuda, and he says, let me be the Eved Tachat Hanar, in the place of the Nar. Binyamin can't be a slave. Let me be there in place. Now, tachat can also mean a monetary exchange. If two objects, I give you one thing in the place of the other. By Yehoshua, when Yehoshua sent spies into the land of Israel, they stayed by Rachav, and they guaranteed Rachav that we, right, for the help, right, as long as you follow the instructions that we've given you to hang that thread outside the window, so when they conquer, they know that that was her house and she should not be harmed. Right? If anything happens, nafshenu tachat, our lives should be in the place of yours. They will die, so she will not. So we see clearly that tachat does not mean that I'm going to get what you got. I'm going to be injured with the injury that you got. I'm going to suffer what you suffered. Rather, I will receive something that was not done to the victim. Something that did not happen to you, that you will not do, is all happen to me. Therefore, tachat actually means an exchange of something different. That which you can't do, I will do. Now, there's a bit of a problem, or not a problem, but we do need to work it through, that if you take a look in Vayikra, Vayikra is the other place where we have this.
Rabbi, how do you just measure, what one person did versus what you get? Like how do you balance out the scales to say, well, what you did to me was just as bad as what you're going to get, so now it's a fair deal.
Okay, so that will come to soon. How do we actually determine what this is? Just 1 second. Over there, the pasuk says, "Kasher yitain mum ba'adam, kain yinatain bo." As the blemish, that which was given to the other person, kain yinatain bo. That is what should be given to them. Now that seems to be. Yeah, page 692. verse Pasuk Yutes, 19. And if a man inflicts a wound in his fellow, as he did, shall be done to him. A break for a break. Shever tachat shever, ayin tachat ayin, etc., etc. So there the Ibn Ezra brings very interestingly that this term of kasher asa, keni asa lo, as was done to him should be done to them, actually we find one other place in Tanakh where we have that term. And that was by Shimshon. And Shimshon, as he burned down the fields of the Plishtim, because they had taken away his wife, he said, as was done to me, that I will do to them. Now, Shimshon Samson did not take their wives and give it to someone else. Rak Mulam Peshiv Lahem. Rather, what did he do? They got a punishment for the wrong that they had done to him. They had wronged him, and he gave back, so to speak. But it does not mean the same punishment. Yes, go.
Isn't it like something that's related to it?
Correct, but it's not the same punishment. It's not the same punishment. That's what Ibn Ezra said. That Ra'ui, it's worthy, you're deserving of this coming to you. Right? Realize how seriously this is viewed. Now there's one other point, and then we'll go through some of the Gemara. On page 932. Page 932. There the Torah says a very interesting thing. The very top of 932, Pasuk Lamed Aleph. Lo tikhu kofer lenevesh rotzeach asher hu rasha lamut, ki mot yumat. Lo tikhu kofer lanus lo yimilchato, lashu l'Hashem v'eretz an mot hakofer. It's talking about a murderer who's very, very wealthy. So the Pasuk says, Lo tikhu kofar. You cannot accept ransom for the life of a killer who's worthy of death. If a person murdered someone else, if he murders someone else, he's deserving the death penalty. He can't buy his way out of there. There is no monetary payment which will take off this death penalty. We're not about bail. Bail is, held in jail in order for me to be released from jail until the trial. That's what bail is. Right? In American law also, there is no such thing. If a person deserving of death, he can't buy his way out of it. Right? Bail is something else. Yes. Now, let's hear this through. So the Torah says you can't bail out, you can't ransom out his life if he's deserving death for killing someone. He can't pay to get off the hook. Now, if we were to say that the Torah said before, that if you damage someone, there's no payment, but what is there? There's bodily damage done to you. If that were the case, then of course if the person murders, there's nothing to talk about. He poked out his eye, he could not make a payment. We poked out his eye. He killed the guy. Now we're going to start to talk about a payment? It only makes sense for the Torah to discuss and to rule out and say, no, there is no payment by death if by bodily injury there is payment. If by bodily injury there is payment, then the Torah will discuss, but by a death there is no payment. But it makes no sense to discuss this if by a bodily injury there is no payment, but there is bodily injury given back, then of course by a death there's no payment. Of course. So the Torah is addressing that over here, there cannot be a bodily, there cannot be a payment. There must be that short of death, there is payment. And therefore I would have thought by death also there might be payment. The Torah says no, there is no payment. Now, let's go back to page 692, 694. Right after it said, ayin tachas ayin, shever tachas shever, The pasuk then says, Mishpat echad yeh lachem. That's on page 694. Right? There's got to be one law for you. Kager, ke'ezrach, whether we're talking about a convert, whether it's a native, everyone must be treated fairly. There's no double standards, there's no set of rules for this group, but not for that group. Fairly means equal. What do you mean? Every situation, regardless of who you are, must be treated in the proper Torah fair manner. Now, that's what it says right after an eye for an eye. Now, as the Ibn Ezra brings, this person poked out his eye. So now,
One person bothers you. You can make a payment. If he's a wealthy guy, he doesn't care. If he's a poor man, maybe he cares. So why is that equal?
no, I'll tell you what's equal. If we were to wrongly understand that it meant an eye for an eye, this person is a photographer. His eye is everything that he does. This person was semi-blind to begin with. Or this person was semi-blind to begin with. And this person had perfect vision. This right now, poking out someone's eye, the medical complications that could follow, who knows what that could lead to. If it's literal, it's impossible for it to be this exact judgment per case. I'm going to knock out 1/3 of his eye, I'm going to diminish, I'm going to use laser surgery to diminish, to bring down his prescriptions or what that, I mean, it doesn't work. So the Torah right away is saying mishpat. It's got to be this proper judgment for each. Then it can only make sense if we say that let's assess. Let's put a monetary value on this eye. And whatever monetary value we place on this eye, that is what this person must pay. Whatever the monetary value that's placed on the eye is, that is what we need to pay. Now it's going to be just. Whether you're a millionaire or you're a pauper, there's a certain value that will be placed on that eye, and that is what must be paid. Correct. Thank you, Your Honor. Right? He doesn't have to pay more because he's a millionaire. That's exactly right.
That's often in the case for us, and does not great things. There's not that disincentive for me to try and actually
Okay, look, if you have a situation where we see this person is running amok, out of control, damaging people, so then the Beit Din can take these extra legal steps to incarcerate, right, to whatever is needed, right? We're talking normal situations. Yes?
You talked about if they're fighting an accident and getting away with it, what happens if the baby's
So there it's, again, the miscarriage or any damage that's caused, it's a monetary payment over there. That says clearly it's a monetary payment. Yes, I would imagine so. That's a separate issue. By a father, that's a separate issue. That's correct. By a father, that's a separate issue. Yes, I
I know
read that.
that we had places where you had to go, jail.
There were places where people were held. Yes. 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 Okay. So the Gemara goes through, right, that if you're going to knock out this one's eye, this one's blind, this one has poor vision, it doesn't work. So the ayin tachas ayin cannot mean, that would not even be just. That would not be any tachat. That would not be in the place of. Now, there is an opinion in the Gemara. Rabbi Eliezer in the Gemara says, ayin tachat ayin mamish. Literal. But the Gemara right away says, right, does that mean literal? The Gemara explains no. You have to understand what he was saying. everyone else views it that when we're assessing the value of the eye, we are assessing the value of the eye of the person who was damaged, who was maimed. What was the damage that was caused to him? So there we say ayin tachas ayin. He says no, ayin tachas ayin mamish literally means what? My eye for his eye. Not literally my eye would be removed, but rather the value of the damager, right? That's what mamish in the context of what's being discussed is, right? It's literally my eye in place of his eye. What's the value of my eyesight? That's what I have got to pay. Now it's interesting because the Torah goes through there are 5 different payments that are calculated when one physically damages someone else. There is the nezek, there's the actual damage that was done. There is the tsar, there is the pain that the person endured. Ripui is the medical bills. To get this person, you got to cover all the medical costs. Nezek, tsar, ripui, shevet is the loss of work, the loss of wages that this person went through, and boshet is the humiliation, the embarrassment that the person went through, and each of those need to be measured specifically for the case. So at this point, I think it's very clear, both from the context of those psukim, and that was so clear. The context of the psukim was that when a person damaged intentionally, he makes a payment. When a person damages accidentally, then clearly he's got to be making a payment. And the actual wording itself, tachat, does not mean it's going to happen to me, what I did to you is going to happen to me. Rather, it's going to come in the place of that which you can no longer do. Right? In the place of you're no longer having vision, you will get compensated as best as we can. The only thing we can't bring back the vision, so you will be monetarily compensated in the place of that. And the fact that the Torah later on speaks and says that when a person murders, we cannot accept a monetary payment in place of his punishment, then it's clear that short of murder, we do accept monetary payment. The Vilna Gaon points out very, very interestingly in the way that the Vilna Gaon, it's not a pen or pencil handy? Thank you. So the pasuk says, ayin tachat ayin. Literally an eye in the place of an eye. The tachat we said means beneath. So the Vilna Gaon says, okay, let's see what is beneath ayin. What letter comes after ayin? What's beneath ayin in the alphabet? Samach ayin pei. What is beneath yud? Chaf. Right? The letter chaf comes after the letter yud. What comes after the letter nun? Samach. Okay? Which are the letters chaf, samach, pei. What does chaf, samach, pei spell? Kesef. Which is money. So the Vilna Gaon says you actually see a remez here that for the ayin you pay, nothing's lucky over here, you pay that which is beneath the ayin. The letters, beneath the letters ayin, yud, nun, are the letters of Kesef. Okay? Okay.
So
How are we assessing it? How are we assessing it? Okay. So that the Gemara asks, right? That the Gemara asks. Now, keep in mind that any loss of earnings, well, any future loss of earnings, well, what the Gemara says, the way it's assessed is, if this person were to be sold as a slave, what is the difference in the price that a person would fetch if he is cited or non-cited? Right? And realize that's one of the 4 payments. That is how we assess the actual nether. And that's going to take... I'm sorry? Correct. And that's going to take into account future earnings, but, right? And all of that. Whatever was missed is the shevet, the ripoy, the healing, the actual pain, the humiliation of the act and going forward. All of that is taken into account. But you're right. The truth is we can't, right? We have to do our best to put a value on it. To say that it's prices and therefore say they don't pay anything, right?
No,
We can't.
I wouldn't
So
say that.
we need to do our best to come up with an amount. But again, I think we see clearly, again, thank you to Rabbi Gil's students, we see from the context over there, from the wording, from the overall concept of Torah, we see clearly that which Chazal are teaching us, it's not, well, first of all, again, it's not something as the Eben Ezra said, right? Ba'aklal, lo nucha levarja derech mitzvah Torah perish alein, im lo nismach al divrei chachamenu zichron lebracha. We cannot explain the mitzvot of the Torah in a complete manner unless, without relying on the words of the Torah Shebal Peh, of Chachamenu Zal, of Chazal. Ki kasher kibalnu ha-Torah min ha'avot, kein kibalnu Torah Shebal Peh. Ein hefesh b'neiim. The same way that we receive the Torah passed down to our generation, so too we receive the Torah Shebal Peh passed down to our generation. Ein hefesh b'neiim. There is no difference between them. So the Torah Shebal Peh was passed down from Moshe to each successive generation, as was the written Torah passed down. And therefore, the explanation we have are not what the rabbis are conjuring, but it's actually the explanation that was given to Moshe, right, on Har Sinai. And again, we see that that's the only way the Torah, it's the only way to make sense of what the Torah is saying over here. Right? Again, as clear as can be, it can't be that 2 psukim ago the Torah said that I beat someone down and nothing happened. For all the wounds that I gave him, no wounds to me, I pay. But if it's an accidental, I tried to do this and I bumped somebody or knocked them over, now I'm going to get maimed for any wounds that was caused to them. It makes no sense whatsoever. Yes, Steve?
Other than what we said today about breaking, would there ever be a situation where there would be a different response based on how far along the pregnancy?
I don't think so. I think that would reflect in the monetary payment of the monetary damage that was done, right? But until the child is born, right? We have the dinim that if the child until the child is born is not considered a fully living human being before it goes on.
What about the first 30 days? Because aren't the laws of the Bayless different?
Oh, the first 30 days that it's living. I'm sorry. Okay, look. If a child is a healthy, viable child, and then something happens to it, and it gets murdered or accidentally, whatever it was within 30 days, that's a different din. There is a din that a child does not live. The reason we do the pidyon ben, the redemption after 30 days, that's when we see that it's a viable child. If the child did not live for 30 days, then we see that it was not a viable child. But that's only if it's on its own, right, is unable to.
So if an accident or something murder.
That would not affect that.
So, but then that would be a case of a regular.
Absolutely. We don't do a funeral for a miscarried child. If there's a burial, but it's not. There's no shiva. There's not more.
In real life, it's a little different. Because in the case of OJ, he got off, so there's no punishment. But then they sued him in civil court, and there was a monetary payment. So, they couldn't prove his guilt.
Right, but even in the case of OJ, had he been found to be guilty of murder,
He would have.
then there would not have been any monetary
No, no,
payment.
no.
Right.
It would have been straight to jail.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was also been straight to jail.
But that
Still, it's a mistake.
but that payment would not have been in place of whatever punishment he got for the murder. That's it. Yes.
I know you said, but that's something. Other religions, other cultures, taking this with that meant they didn't read what we have. Or
Well,
they
misinterpret.
Yeah.
And we misinterpret if it says monetary, it says it's monetary.
It doesn't say monetary. It says an eye for an eye. See, the context clearly. If you look back 3 psukim and you see that for a willful damage, there's only monetary compensation.
No, I understand it's
Yeah.
monetary, so that means that
So, but people look at it and say, look, it says an eye for an eye. They
In the other religion, Islam, if you steal in some countries, they cut off your hand.
yeah, I don't know if that's if that's
Well, that-
Sharia law, if that's Islamic law, or if that's just
point is,
Middle
it has no
Eastern
bearing on
progressive
Torah, that's
approaches
their
to
own-
society.
that's their own law.
I'm sorry?
There's no bearing on what the Torah says.
Correct.
It's their own law.
Correct. Correct.
You think they got it from?
I don't know. I don't know.
the ancient Philippine Bible, which is American ancient they literally put everything. You, especially when you were building a building, and the building fell on somebody's son, they killed your son. Literally.
Thank you. Okay. Yes.
Reading on here, it says, if the woman should fighting, then that's a murder.
Well, there are 2 different opinions over there that they have. Right. If I'm finding this person and I end up killing someone else, is that punishment by death or not? That's a yeah. The person would not receive capital punishment. Essentially.
Second degree murder.
Shkoch, everybody. Thank you, Dov.
Can I have a copy of the
Yes.